Welcome back to the Ghost Bunny Podcast. I'm your host, Bridget Marquardt, with a brand new episode for you guys today. I'm so excited because my guest today is Adam Berry. Adam Berry, as many of you already know, is the executive producer and star of his own paranormal reality television show on the Travel Channel called Kindred Spirits, now in its 7th season. His other TV credits include Reunion in Hell, Haunted Salem Live, Kindred Spirits Resurrected, Paranormal Lockdown, Expedition Unknown, Search for the Afterlife, Ghost Hunters Halloween Live, Ghost Hunters Academy, Pickler and Ben, The Anderson Cooper Show, and Weekend Today, among many others. After growing up in a haunted house and years of study and research, he founded his own paranormal research team with his husband, Ben Berry, in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And soon after, his hobby became a career. He has traveled the country extensively, giving lectures in theaters and at conferences and conventions on paranormal investigation and supernatural phenomenon, and he's a graduate of the Boston Conservatory, and I'm so excited to have him with us today. Adam, thank you so much for doing the show today.
Thank you. Love you.
Do you know how much I love talking to you? Like, you bring such a big smile to my face every time I see your face.
I think we have really great smiles. We could be related and not know it, you and I.
That's true. That is possibly true. I want to hear all about your LA trip because, so just so the audience knows, you were recently in well, I shouldn't say LA, you're more in Orange County. And I really wanted to meet up with you and do the podcast in person because it was an opportunity to do the podcast in person and see you. But you had a crazy schedule. I know you had Disneyland. And
Yeah. Listen, the Mouse House called. I called, and it was just packed.
Yes, no, I totally get it. But then I was thinking too, oh my God, no, it's actually better to talk to him afterwards because I know you were doing the Kellogg House and stuff like that, so I could find out like what you experienced and how that all went. So tell me everything. What happened? Where were you guys? What'd you guys do? And tell me about all the spooky stuff.
Absolutely. So, okay. As you know, being on the East Coast, we don't ever it's hard for us to get to LA. I know it's just a plane ride, and I know everyone's like, it's just a plane ride, but like still, we rarely get out there to do any sort of event. And so when I learned about the Kellogg House, which is in Santa Ana, California, the Kellogg family, not the cereal family, they're the family that does the fertilizer. So if you go to a landscaping store, you see Kellogg, it's that family. There was an opportunity to do that. And I was like, this sounds really fun, right? And with every work trip, you want to write off as much as you can. So I was like, I'll also go to Disneyland because I had never been for 2 days. Like, I was a kid that I went to Disney World over a dozen times since I was 6 years old. Like, I love Disney World. But Disneyland is like the OG. It's the original. Yeah. And so my husband and I spent, the first day we flew in on Wednesday. We went to the Warner Brothers studio tour, right? Because I had never actually seen a backlot of anything.
Okay.
It was wild. It was so crazy. They're obviously people in LA and they're probably used to it. But I was just like, this is so wild. Like the costumings and the information and the old movies and some of my favorite movies. I'm looking at the houses that they used and the sets, and it was really incredible. And then the first day was Disneyland. We walked 22,846 steps in one day, and we got the best fast pass we could get because the line, it was kind of crowded a little bit.
Always.
Because everything's so close together. That was something new. I was like, holy God, I've not seen this many strollers parked against a wall in my life.
Yeah, I know.
But we didn't have time. So I was like, we got the fast pass. We were the only people wearing magic bands because apparently that's not a thing really at Disneyland. So we had our magic bands. I had my Haunted Mansion magic band. And we rode every single ride we could possibly ride that day to get it out of the way. And if I felt like I ran a marathon, I got back to the hotel and I was so exhausted, but it was so much fun, literally seeing everything and being in that space. The original Pirates of the Caribbean, we got to go to Club 33 and have a little bite to eat in the bar.
Were you with Bob?
I didn't get to meet Bob Gurr this time, but it's in the works because apparently he's a hoot and a holler and a half. I was Bob. I have to pick his brain. I really want to talk to him about all of these cool videos from Disneyland and Disney World where people say they've captured ghosts. I want his thoughts on that as the original, he was there. He knows what's happening. He knows if anything, I don't know. So I'd love
I
to.
just want to interject and let the listeners know Bob Gurr is one of the OG Disney guys. He invented the Doom buggy. He invented the anything with like wheels basically at Disneyland. Like he is the guy who invented it, and he is amazing. And I was on his podcast not that long ago, and he's just awesome. We did a slumber party with Bob Gurr at the Haunted Mansion Airbnb in Fullerton.
Wow. That right there is an experience. Like I want to get up to we were talking about Disney's house,
Yes. Oh,
where
it's awesome. It's so
right?
awesome.
So that's the next plan. I think we're going to try to do something there and like
Yeah.
hang out, and you'll have to come for sure.
Yeah.
But like it was really great just to be immersed in that whole thing and to be able to have cocktails with Dusty, our friend.
I know
got
Dusty.
us,
Yes.
yeah, Dusty. So let
me just fill in the listeners. Dusty has a Disney chat, it's Mouse Chat, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Mouse Chat.
Chat.
I'm not on the Disney chats, but he runs a Disney like chat space, and he knows everything about Disney, and he's awesome. And he is last time I was at Club 33, I ran into him there too.
Yeah. So he was so great. Like he knows, like you're right, he knows everything. And so he was telling us stories upon stories about the history of Club 33 and the lounge, and just like that to me just blew my mind, because it's something so special that only a few people really get to experience something like that, if you either you're a member or you know someone. So that was just the icing on the cake. It was so wonderful. And then the next day, because we had done so much the first day, the next day was very chill.
Oh,
it was
good.
literally like, we just walked around slowly. It was the Chinese kickoff, the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year. So there was parades and amazing food. Our friend Julie met up with us, and we hung out with her for a while. So day 2, it was great. I needed it to relax and to like hang out. And then the ultimate thing, which was the third day, I like literally lounged around the hotel room all morning long until I had to go to the event, because I was like, I need to rest up. Mm-hmm. I had already walked, 30,000 steps. Oh, and what was the one thing that was not open on Thursday and Friday, but opened on Saturday? Because I think they redid the whole thing, and then they did the overlay with Nightmare Before Christmas, right? And then they took Nightmare Before Christmas out January 7th through that day. And it was the first time it's been open, actual Haunted Mansion, in like a year and a half, right?
I'm not sure about, but they also brought in a new bride.
Oh, yes. I heard about her. I love it. It's sort of a flashback to the original, like the 70s, the beating heart thing, which is so cool. I think she looks great. Some people were like, I can't stand it. But I was like, well, what are you talking about? It's original. She's holding the candelabra. You can see her red heart. Oh, and also I was told that sometimes you'll see she disappears. So sometimes she'll be holding it, and then sometimes you'll see her and she'll like vanish, and you'll only see her beating heart and the candelabra floating. So it just depends on like your timing. So sometimes she'll be there, sometimes she won't be there. So I'm obsessed. I think it's great to sort of switch it up a little bit. The story makes sense. She doesn't have a hatchet, which was fine, but it never fit the storyline of the Haunted Mansion kind of thing. But I did get to visit a real Haunted Mansion, which is the Kellogg House. And let me tell you, so there were 80 people there from all over California that wanted to come and hang out, and other parts. Some people came from Washington State. Some people flew in from Rhode Island. And I had never been there before. And so for me, when I enter a space like that, there was the Kellogg House. There was another like carriage house. There was a blacksmith shop on the outside that we could investigate. And then there's one other house on the property that they've just started renovating again, which looks very spooky, haunted.
It's so creepy.
Yeah, just so insane.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where like I felt like when I do those investigations, I feel like I'm entering into their home, right? Like they have told us all the claims, and they said, the family is here. Helen, which was his wife, she is there a lot. And so they always say, hello, Helen, when they enter the house, and goodbye, Helen, when they leave the house. And so for me, I don't ever want to feel like I'm invading. So I kind of walk in and I say, hello, Helen. I to myself, sometimes I'm like, thank you for letting me be here. Hopefully you'll reach out to us. And in the end, it was very, very active. Like we were able to discover, like they had found her reading glasses when they were going through some archives, and they were going through some stuff, and they looked down, and these glasses were just kind of sitting there, and they didn't understand why. They're like, where did these come from? And they're like, I wonder if these are Helen's. And so they go through pictures, and they're like, sure enough, these are Helen's like reading glasses. She has them on in her wedding photo. She has them on some other photos that were taken of her, but like nobody knows where they came from. Like, why did they just appear? Like nobody took them out of the archives. And so I asked her, I said, they're confused about where these glasses came from. And she said it was her. She said I was the one that found them and put them out so that they could be back in the house. So they're like hanging on the wall in like a shadow box frame. There's a giant like mast from the 1700s that's in the middle of the house, like a ship's mast that he found or salvaged in San Francisco. And she was very clear about not liking it at first. She was like, no, I didn't want that in the house. I didn't want anything part of it. But now she likes, like she grew to love it, right? Because he built that house and was the architect, but completely changed his plans when he found that mast. And so she was like, at first I was like, my husband's crazy, like basically being like, I don't like it. And then finally she was like, no, it's good though. It looks good. It fits the space, I think is what she said, which is amazing. There's some mystery around that family that I can talk about. So her husband, and I'm trying to remember his name because I don't want to get it wrong. Hiram. That's right.
Because we did an episode. I went to the Kellogg House and did an episode with Darcy about it, so the listeners know about the Kellogg House.
Oh, good. Hiram. Yes, Hiram. That's right, Hiram. I was saying, well, because that child, he went to Hawaii, right, and then came back with a lady, and then 8 months later, that lady left, went back to Hawaii, and then they named the daughter. What was it? Rose. But the first name was a Hawaiian name. Oahu Rose is what they. Yeah.
I don't remember that part. Well, I don't remember the Oahu part.
Yeah, her name is Oahu Rose. They named the daughter Oahu Rose, right? But she was blonde hair, blue eyes, looked like all the other children. But there's some discrepancy on whether or not like it is Helen's child. And so we were sitting downstairs at the dining room table, and I had the dead bell. That rings, it dings for answers, once for yes, two for no. It was in the office to the side where she ended up passing away in that room. That was her downstairs bedroom. And so we were all at that table, and the bell was in there. And I said, Helen, I'm going to bring up something that might be sensitive. I was like, I want to talk about your daughter, Rose. And there was silence because the bell had been answering, and all of a sudden it sort of was like, quiet silence. And I said, did you ever resent your husband for having that happen? This is the rumor, right? Did you ever resent him? And it was like 2 dings, no, right? And then I started asking some more questions. I said, did you love all of your children equally? Yes. And then it got where she immediately shut off. She was like, I don't want to talk about this anymore, basically. Like, this is none of my business. True, right? This is a family matter, right? And so when she answered, I never resented my husband. I loved all my kids equally. And then I was like, I asked her something else, and she got very quiet. And I was like, you don't want to talk about it, right? It was like ding, 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 And I was like, okay. And everybody in the room was like, oh, okay, we're not going to talk about it anymore. But what's interesting about that is I love communicating the spirits who are, we say intelligent, right? Like they have the ability to answer questions, yes or no. They talk to us. But I could get a personality. Like sometimes you don't get a personality from who you're speaking to on the other side. It's sort of like they answer questions and they move on. The only other person that I felt that I really got a personality from was like Lizzie Borden, right? Oh. When I was chatting with her, I felt like she had a sense of humor. I felt like she was a strong-willed individual, and so is Helen. So having these conversations, I could feel that she was done talking about the scandalous stuff. And she was like, but I'll talk to you about anything else. So we ended up talking about the parties that they would throw, the music that was played in the parlor area, the fact that, her kids really didn't, weren't around at the end of her life. And I asked her, I was like, well, what was the last year you remember? And she says 62. And she passed away in 63, right? So the last really year she remembers was 1962. She dies at 93 in 1963. The kids weren't really around. And it was only until I think the houses were going to be demolished or something that the kids stepped in and moved them to where they sit now and created this, museum. And she appreciated that, right? Like, it wasn't like she held animosity towards her children at all. And she was happy that the legacy was saved, because it was all about, for that family specifically, they did so much, especially Hiram. I mean, the amount of, didn't he create Santa Ana, did the city and the layout, or he was just that kind of entrepreneurial, knew what he was doing, made a lot of money, was high up, had a handlebar mustache that you could hold on to and swing around, I'm sure. But so both of them were just so so handsome, put together, and ready to go. And I think their history and their family is worth mentioning and talking about. And so she was very excited, she was happy that the kids did what they did so that we could have the access to the house and learn about their family. But again, really active. There were a lot of people there that had never, if we had 80 guests, there were probably 60 that had never investigated ever before, ever. And they were like, is it always like this? And I'm like, no, no, it's not. Yeah. We had a door open on its own in front of everyone, and people were like, what is that? And I couldn't debunk it. We heard footsteps above us while we were on the first floor, and we were in smaller groups, right? There wasn't just 80 people at once. So we had the ability to sit quiet and listen. And the house is solid redwood. It's not creaking too much. When you go up the stairs, sure, but
stairs, yeah.
Right? It is a solid house that doesn't make noise on its own. So when you're hearing things and you're interacting with the ghosts there, it's it's them, right? You can tell it's them, and it's not like a car or a plane. But people were very excited, very impressed. And I personally can't wait to go back. I can't wait.
Well, I think also, too, what I love about investigating there is Darcy is so knowledgeable on everything and an amazing investigator. And Martin, who also from Golden State Paranormal, who also helps investigate there, is incredible. And they really go above and beyond to debunk things. I went there and I did my podcast and I did a history tour for the Patreon and stuff. But then I went back and just did an investigation with just Darcy and Martin. And I brought a friend who'd never been, she's scared to death of all this stuff. And then all of a sudden she decided in one, just recently, that she wanted to do Universal Horror Nights with me, which is what she's even scared to do those things.
That's amazing.
And then two, that she wanted to go on a paranormal investigation with me. So I'm like, who are you? But anyway, I did both with her.
Yeah.
And the paranormal investigation was very active, even though it was just us. Oh, but first I wanted to say about debunking. We kept seeing this kind of weird light on the carpet. We were sitting in the dark, and there was a weird light that all of a sudden would kind of glow and roll across the carpet. And it looked very paranormal at first, but then we figured it out that it was actually a light, a car light from way out in the street that was hitting the windows just right, which was causing this glow on the carpet. But so what I'm saying is that they really go out of their way to debunk things and make sure that anything that we're feeling is indeed paranormal.
Yeah.
And then my friend who came with us, so much stuff was happening that night. And like you said, the bell was going crazy. We were getting responses to that kind of stuff. We had the SLS camera up at one time, and somebody was doing the Estes method, and they felt like somebody was standing right next to them. And on the SLS camera, we could see a stick figure standing next to them.
Wow.
And my friend literally just she put her hood on and went and sat on the couch and was like, I'm ready to go whenever you are. She just And I was like, I can't leave. They're like doing this investigation for me. And like,
Yeah.
I can't leave yet. So she just like kind of was really upset about it and like just sat there. And on the way home, she's like, I don't really understand what I just witnessed. I don't really understand what just happened. And I'm like, well, we were just communicating with the other side. It's not scary. It's not weird. It's not,
Yeah.
And she's
And
like,
she's hooked now. She's hooked.
Yes, that's the next thing I was going to tell you. So for a few days, she had like questions and she was talking to all these people about it who also thought it was weird that she was doing that. But then like a week later, she's like, if you go back, I would really like to do that again. And she's like totally into it now.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because I described to people, they were like, well, how did you get into this? Well, you get into it from like a genuine, like a curiosity. Like you are genuinely curious about what if, can it, will it, like, and then when you get that first encounter or experience, I think a ghost just popped this out of my ears, by the way. What is happening right now? Why did it do that? You see, it just fell out. I caught my reflexes though.
Yeah, you caught it in midair.
I could have been a professional ball player. Anyway, so I feel like genuinely you have to be interested. But when you get that first taste of the paranormal where it's like, oh my God, I can't explain this, and you can't explain it away. And how does that work? That thing reads, okay. And then you sit with it for a couple of days because you're still trying to process it. And then all of a sudden, there's either A or B. You either you're afraid of it. You're like, you know what? I'm okay. Like I had it. I'm not going to do it again. Or it's, I got to have more of it. I got to have more of it. And I call it the paranormal like drug. It's a paranormal drug. It's like you experience something, you really want it to happen again because you want to make sure that it's real. Like, okay, it's got to happen again, and then you just can't get enough of it and you're going to keep doing it forever and ever. So your friend is absolutely hooked. I feel sad. I feel happy, but also she's going to tag along everywhere you go now. She's going to be like, you're going to go to what convention? I'm coming,
That's
For sure.
Okay. That'd be fun. I don't really I have lots of people that I know, obviously, that love this stuff, but I don't really have like a friend who's like all about it. Like that a ride or die that I'm like, let's go check this out right now.
Yeah. There's a lot of people actually that are out there that have, like they're really interested in it, but they don't have like that core person or group of people that they can talk about it. So that's why I think these like Patreons and online communities, like the one that you've created and the ones that are, really great and talk about ghosts and online, especially on TikTok, like it allows people to talk to other, quote unquote weirdos about ghosts and about like the really cool stuff that you can't maybe talk about at your office job or with your friends because your friends aren't really into it. And they're like, yeah, around Halloween, everyone's into it. Around Halloween, everyone's into it. But we're Paranormal 365. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think is cool about doing like you were hosting at the Kellogg House and 80 people came from all over. And like you said, like 60 of them probably have never done this before. Like, I think that's what's cool about hosting these type of events too, is it brings people who like maybe were too scared to try it on their own or don't even know where to start on their own to come out and be able to try it out and see if it's something that they're interested in and find a group of people that that are also like-minded or also interested in this stuff. I would love to start doing more of that, like going and like hosting investigations somewhere or just like tours or, just like being there and experiencing it. We don't even have to be hardcore investigating.
Exactly. My whole thing is like, I always tell people up front, I'm like, this is an educational experience, right? Because of even though the group sizes are small, I mean, this is not just me and 8 people, right? There's like me and 14 other people spread out in this space. And so I always encourage people, I'm like, look, it's going to be an educational experience. If you've never investigated before, I ask that you participate. Like we're going to do EVPs, like we're going to ask questions. Please ask questions. There are no wrong way to ask, like whatever you want to ask is totally fine. But let's be in this together. And I always, I have people like after they come through the meet and greet, I always say, well, take your time, hang out, say hello to the people next to you. Like, meet people that have the same interests. They're around. You might find Chip Coffey always says that you sit next to people that you have more in common than you think you do, right? Like even in his gallery readings or wherever. And I believe that is true. So I'm like, look to the person to your right and left, find out where they're from. Have they investigated before? Like let's make it this community thing. And so for those 6 hours that everybody's together, it's like this really cool community. and people get inspired to ask questions about ghosts and things that they normally don't get access to. So I love it, and I can't wait to go back and do more and like investigate more. Like I love hosting events and introducing people to things that they would never get a chance to do on their own, you know?
Yes.
For
Yes. I
sure.
love that too. Is this the only paranormal thing you did while you were in LA?
Besides, yes. So yeah, that was the only big paranormal thing that I had planned. And I would suggest anyone that's doing that, do Disney after. Because once I had done Disney for 2 days, I was like, I'm sad. I'm gonna go again, you know. So next time, I think I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna get there first, do the event stuff, so that I'm like, I was totally fine, but you know, the reward should be Disney, not not the investigation. But yeah, it was the only sort of paranormal thing I did. I did ask a lot of ghost haunted questions on my Warner Brothers studio tour.
Uh-huh.
Because there are some sound stages there that are haunted, and she was, pointed out that they were. She did say something about Betty Davis. She said that, so we went down this upside road while we were on the studio, and we looked at this like cemetery that's right next to it, and it's a really famous cemetery. There tons of famous people are buried there, and they said Betty Davis is buried there, and she had requested that she be buried facing the studio so she could always keep a lookout. But instead, they buried her facing away and had her tombstone or headstone facing the studio, right? And I was like, she's pissed. I was like, she has to be pissed. Like, you did not do what she said. And the guide said something about that sometimes they say that you can see her like at her grave, like she'll be standing there, or she's like in the area. So she was hinting at, but not saying 100%, hinting at that Betty Davis is probably haunting the Warner Brothers lot. And I was like, do tell. I was like, I want to know more,
Yeah.
But it was cool. Again, a whirlwind trip. I wish we could spend a longer time, and but it was fun. It was fun nonetheless. And I also, between you and me, because of the fires they're still happening now as we talk. But I didn't want to be in LA's hair so much. Everyone's dealing with so much, and I could tell there was everyone was so kind when I was driving in traffic. I was like, this is not Massachusetts. Everybody was like going with the flow and really chill, and like I didn't care that I was in traffic for an hour and 45 minutes. Nobody was trying to be speed racer, honking at people. It was almost like the Zen vibe. And I have my heart goes out to anyone that's dealing with any of that stuff. And I've made it a point to donate, and I was like telling all of my event people, keeping them up to date. It was like, yes, we're still having it because Santa Ana is such a distance away from it. But if you want to donate to any resources, here are the resources that you can use. So next time, I'm going to deep dive into LA. But I've investigated Madame Tussauds in LA. I've investigated the Black Dahlia murder house.
Wait, the Soden house.
Yeah. So we
Ooh.
investigated that for ghost hunters.
How was that? Because I hear that place is crazy.
Yeah, it's really wild. I mean, it was the first time that I ever been in a house where like it's set up to film, right? Like it's so spotless, that house, that you feel like you're on this really crazy movie set, almost like Death Becomes Her.
Well, and just for people who don't know, look up the Soden House. It's a very strange architecture and a very strange layout. It was a Frank Lloyd Wright architecture thing, and it's like it's called like the Aztec House, and it's if you aren't familiar with it, check it out, because you'll like get a vibe just by looking at the pictures of this house.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, we were. I just remember like. The rooms and just the layout seemed very unnerving, right?
Yes.
Like I can imagine, if she were if she were murdered there, like the fear that one would have, like it reminds me of every single like American Horror Story house that you're just unnerved by. But we did get activity. I mean, it's been so long since I've investigated there. The one thing that I do remember is we kept getting information pointing, I think, towards the basement. And if you recall on that episode, I think they even had to do like a follow-up, but they got a cadaver dog to go into the house and into the basement. And the dog picked up on something in the dirt of the basement there, right? Strangely enough, this happened on Kindred Spirits too. But I think that literally, the fact that the cadaver dog hit on that space, it reopened that case for them to like really dig through, like, okay, let's really think about this house and this location. But yeah, really, really active in the sense of like lights were going off and we were getting EVPs, and just the feelings there are intense, just so intense. Matthew Tussauds, on the other hand, was not as, I mean, it's already creepy because you're seeing wax figures of famous people and you're like, I'm already wigged out right now. So I couldn't get past how realistic everybody looked. And I was like, oh, look, there's Britney Spears. And like, awkward. This is so weird, but it was fine.
And speaking of Betty Davis, she is also one of the wax figures in there. I did an episode on my old podcast at the Madame Tussauds Wax Museum as well. But Betty Davis is one of the wax figures, and she's one of the ones that they say is haunted.
Yeah, I literally right now I'm looking. I have a picture of her. I have a picture of her in my phone of me taking it with her because I was like, and she looks insanely scary. Let me see if I can find it really quick while we're chatting.
Oh my god! Phone.
Oh my god! Is this it? Yes.
You know who else is haunting that place is the Vivian Lee wax figure.
Really?
Supposedly her dress moves.
Okay, that's Gloria Swanson, and this is, look at that.
Oh yes, there it is.
Look at her! What a dump! And also, I'm a child. When was this?
I know. I was like, look at you.
2012.
It's Adam.
2012. You guys. 2012. Me and Judy Garland.
I love it. Aww.
I can't. What are we doing?
There's something that you I think already did recently, and I'm so jealous of this. You did an investigation at the Mark Twain house.
I did. I love the Mark Twain house. It's in Hartford, Connecticut.
I did a tour there 1,000,000 years ago. I mean, 1,000,000 years ago. And this was like, this was before any ghost shows, anything. Like this was literally bedrock days. And I'm like, this place is haunted.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So I've investigated there. That's probably my fifth or sixth time back. So I went there for Ghost Hunters Academy. I went there with Ghost Hunters. I did a private with some donors for them, a special event thing. I did a book signing there with Steve Gonzalez. And then I did this sort of same type event twice. So each time you go and investigate there, obviously everyone thinks Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens is, there. Maybe the daughter Susie is there. But what's really interesting is the activity. I think it's a family, right? It's lived in. It's you walk into their house. The architecture is insane. Everything about it is so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And this time, like last time, we talked to Mark Twain. And I know people are like, that's impossible. Like, how do you know? So on the top floor, there's a billiard room, which was his space, right? And there's his desk and there's papers there and there's writing. It's his actual pool table. And these events go to the Mark Twain to help them restore certain things. So the last event we did there restored the pockets on the pool table because they have to be handmade. They have to be stitched. And so we were talking to him and he was very much there with us, answering our questions about did you write, what did you feel about the book that was written with the Ouija board? With your ghost. And he's like, I hated it. Or we brought him a cigar. Someone had brought him a brand new cigar and he said, thank you. He appreciated that. But every single time that we speak with him in the billiard room, there always comes a point where he humors us for about 15, 20 minutes, right? And you're like, he's asking questions. We're asking questions. He's answering. We think it's Mark Twain. And then there's a point where he's like, okay, get out. Get up. Like, you've been here too long in my personal space. You got to exit, right? And so it happened again. It was the same sort of concept where we were communicating with him. We were getting information. He said, thank you for the gifts. He was very polite. And then he was like, okay, time to go. And so And so I was like, because somebody asked, do you want us to leave you alone? And it was like, yes, I do.
You never asked that question because
Exactly.
if they say yes, you're screwed.
And I looked at that person and I was like, if I pay this back and it says yes, we've got to go. And it was like, yes. And I was like, gotta go. So we left. It was fine. I think what's interesting too about this time, George, who was, I would say, butler, I guess, if that's the best way to put it, George, house butler. They had just found a photograph of him because they had never found any photos of him. And somebody uncovered a photo of George in Texas or somewhere. And he's sitting on in the gazebo on the porch with 3 other women. And they were like, oh my God, we think this is George. And so they did research and sure enough, it's him. So it's the only photo they have of him. And they blew it up and they brought it out. And I was like, George, let's talk about this photo. So George talked about the photo. He confirmed that it was him. It didn't say who the other ladies were that were sitting there, but he was very much like in the, knew that they had found this photo. And he also was aware or made aware that the money now that from this past investigation and some other things that we're going to try to do is going to go to get him a headstone because he's buried in Queens, New York in a cemetery, but he doesn't have a headstone. They just know where he is, right? And so they're going to raise enough money to get him a proper, beautiful headstone worthy of someone Mark Twain loved very much, right? As a friend and confidant. Also, they're going to have to pay all the back fees for the maintenance of the plot because nobody's been paying it for so long. So, we let him know that that's what we're going to do. And it's almost like he was like, wow, like, okay, this is great. He was there. I think maybe it was Susie, the daughter was there a little bit. Well, what's interesting, because we start so not late, we start around 6:00 or 7. By the time we get to 10:30, the energy of the house shifts from like what they would have been doing, right? They would have gotten ready. They would have had dinner. They would have gone through to the main parlor with the fireplace. There would have been stories told. And then the children would have gone to bed. Mark would have gone to his study. The wife would have gone to wherever, and then about 10:30, 11, they would go to bed. So as the night winds down, the activity starts to wind down. And it's happened every single time we've investigated, like clockwork. It's the weirdest thing because sometimes you go to a place and you can get activity and it's popping all night. But it just seems like they're in such a routine that at a certain point it slows down. And the only people really at the end that we could get to talk to us were, like George or there was another lady, I think I would say servant, but like, that's not the right word, but like maid, I guess, that was there. But those two would have been up past the family doing other things. And so we would get our interaction with it, but the family's conversation sort of died out. And it makes sense to me because they're going to bed. They're like, I'm out.
It's so interesting. They're still on a routine on the other side.
Yeah, it's so wild. It's so wild. But it just shows like it's a family that's lived in and their energy is still there. And if and they're intelligent. If they don't feel like talking to you, they're not going to.
And that's why he's like, get out. He's like, it's my bedtime. Like, what are you guys still doing here? Get out.
Right. And as a creative person, like I work best, late night sometimes. Like I'm a night owl. So like I like doing things at night. And maybe he's the same. He's like, okay, I got to work or I've got to do things now. But such a beautiful house that anyone can ever go. I mean, it's not just the house either. There's a giant museum that's dedicated to Mark Twain, and they have exhibits and lots of events. So if anyone's in the New England area and you've not gone to the Mark Twain house, go, because the architecture is gorgeous and it reminds me of the Kellogg House. Like it reminds me of the same sort of architecture.
There are similarities, but the Mark Twain house is massive.
Huge. And like the fact that we get to go in there, we work with 2 docents that are, Mallory was one of them. She's a dear friend of mine. I've known her since my first episode of Ghost Hunters Academy. And she and the other docent, they walk with us, right? So there's only about 10 of us in a group. You have to sit on the floor or you sit in a folding chair. You can't touch anything, right? Can't lean on, like there's things, right? But it's so special to be in an environment like that where the velvet rope is sort of down.
Yeah.
Right. Which you don't get an experience. Like the only time that really happens is if you're doing an event like this, or if you're filming a TV show like Ghost Hunters and Kindred Spirits. Like it was never lost on me how many times the ropes come down in these museums and we get to go into these spaces because they trust us, and obviously we lead it like we found it. But just the experiences that you get to have like that are rare. I think you get to do it, we get to do it, but not a lot of people get to. So when you get this opportunity to go into this house where they're basically like, yeah, we're going to sit around in the dark and try to talk to Mark Twain and his family, and nobody gets to do this. It's very special. It's very special.
Definitely. Yeah, what you're saying about the rope too, like I have that experience lots of places, but one that really comes to mind is the Winchester House. Like they're so nice and like open up the ropes and stuff for so many things there. And I'm like, oh my God, I love you guys. And I love that you trust me to be here and do this.
You and me, girl. You and me. Let's do something at the Winchester because I've never been and I want to go so bad.
Let's set it up. Let's set it up.
Do it. Done. Everyone, look for tickets. It's happening.
Yes, I would love to do that. And then recently, too, I was just at the Merchant's House in New York City, and Dan Sturgis gave us a tour, and he was like, opening the ropes for us, and we're standing in the bedroom, and like all the way in the living room, and things like that, and walking around the kitchen, and it's just really special. But speaking of New York City and that area, I was going to talk about Mark Twain being a very active ghost. Like every time I hear about Mark Twain haunts this place, or used to live here, or stayed here, whatever, I have to be like, because he's been so many places. And one of the places is New York City. There's the murder house. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he supposedly was one of the original ghosts there.
Really?
That's
wild.
A long time ago. And then Virginia City has Mark Twain.
Yeah. It's almost like George Washington slept here. They're like George Washington slept here. And I feel like what's interesting is you talk about the Merchant House. I got to investigate the Merchant House this is again a long time ago. I think it was 2012, 2013. I took NBC reporter into the Merchant House to investigate ghosts. And when you walk up the first main set of stairs and you go to the right, and it's primary bedroom with the bathroom.
Yeah.
We were getting so much activity in that bedroom with a 4-post bed and into the bathroom that the reporter was convinced that we were doing something. And I was like, no. And so I had them go in by themselves, and it was still happening. And they were just, it was like knocks and weird movement things happen. And I know we're in the middle of the city, but it was kind of late and not happening. But her eyes got this big and never changed for the rest of the time we were there. But I think what's interesting is that house has so much history, right? That has so much history. The Mark Twain has so much history, and I do think it's funny though when people are like, "Oh yeah, Mark Twain's ghost is here." It's like George Washington slept here. He could be anywhere.
Monroe.
Exactly. Well,
everywhere.
That's another thing. Let's get it. I would love to get up into that hotel where that room. I don't know if they even rent that room out. They probably don't.
Which one? The Hollywood Roosevelt? Which hotel?
Yeah. The one that she passed away in, the room that she passed away in?
No, she passed away in her house in Brentwood.
Oh, never mind.
But the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel,
yes.
She supposedly used to stay there, and there's a mirror where people see her image in it.
That's wild. We were going to stay there. We were going to stay there for a couple of nights before we truncated the trip because of the fires, but we were going to stay there for a couple of nights. And, I was always told this, the original Tower of Terror. It's looks like the Tower of Terror. It's the original ghost. I would love to go there too.
The lobby is so gorgeous. It's beautiful. The rooms are meh.
Yeah.
But the hotel is beautiful.
I would love to, it's one of those things, I'm a fan of a lot of things. I'm a fan of Marilyn Monroe. Obviously, she's classic Hollywood star that, there's some discrepancies about how did she really pass away?
I
it was
would love
the Kennedys,
to know.
Right? I would ask her, I would love to get in there and just be like, Marilyn, let's do it. Let's just have a heart to heart. Tell me things. And obviously I'm still going to be skeptic, and everybody's going to take any information that we get as being a little skeptic. But if she literally tells me whatever happened, I'll be like, look, I don't know what to tell you, but they said, this is what she says in the recorder. Sounds just like her. I don't know what to tell you, but I would totally ask about all of that. I wouldn't be afraid to.
Yeah, totally. I have a Mark Twain story for you. It's not haunted, but Nick's grandfather was Hal Roach, and he started the Little Rascals. He did Of Mice and Men, Laurel and Hardy. He, did all of that stuff. But when he was younger, he was a paper boy, and he would go past this one house, and there'd be this guy outside writing and crumpling up everything he wrote, and there'd be crumpled papers all around him, and he would throw the newspaper to him. Because he was the paper boy, and it was Mark Twain.
That's amazing. He hated everything he did too. It's like he's like, I can't. He's throwing it. Was this in Los Angeles?
No, I think I don't know exactly what town, but his grandpa was born in Elmira, New York. So.
Oh, okay. Huh. I wonder if it's, it was probably, because somebody said something. They're buried in Elmira. Aren't they buried up in New York too? Mark Twain and the kids? We don't know. Let me Google. I'll Google it after this. We'll figure it out.
Well, Hal Roach's. I know that part, but I don't know about. I don't know where Mark Twain is. Okay, did this happen yet, or is it about to happen? Ohio State Reformatory.
It is happening. Okay, so this is a big thing. So I'm doing a big event on March 8th at the Ohio State Reformatory, and I'm very excited because I haven't been back in a few years.
Okay, but you've been there before.
Oh yeah, I went there for Ghost Hunters Academy, and then I've done a couple of events there. It's the Shawshank Redemption Prison. Everybody, that's how people know it, basically.
Also known as Mansfield Reformatory.
Yes, and it's the. So I've been there a few times, and it's the one place. You're gonna laugh at me, but we were up because you can like go up the stairs and like walk through the big prison, like because it's stacked. Everything's stacked now, and they've got gates up, but there's parts you can walk through. I swear to you, I heard a toilet flush in that area, and there's no running water at all whatsoever. But It was me and another person, and I literally hear a toilet flush, and the nearest bathroom is like on the other side down, like nowhere near. And I was like, did I just hear a disembodied toilet? Like, that makes no sense to me. And I laughed about it at first, but then I was like, that's so wild, because it makes sense. Because every room had a toilet. So, of course, if it's going to why me? Why now? That's the craziest thing. But I've also, we've seen shadow figures down in Solitary. When you get to do the free roam, like the VIPs for this event get to do a free roam by themselves. I always encourage people to go to Solitary and then go down another level, which is literally under Solitary, and it goes forever, like vast. It's vast. You get lost. And I'm always like, that's where you want to go, because sometimes ghosts go to places where we are the least. And that would be a place like they would go to hide out. To be like, I don't want to be near these people, so I'm going to go down and hide. So I always have people go down there. Of course, it always feels heavy and weird in Solitary, because it is. The energy there is so bizarre and crazy. And then, so we're doing it on March 8th, right? And my birthday is March 9th. So I'm doing this whole, come and celebrate my birthday and let's look for ghosts. But most importantly, on March 7th, the day before the event, the paperback for my book, Goodbye Hello, drops.
Oh, wow.
Which is awesome. And so it's like this big weekend celebration. We're going to look for ghosts. We're going to celebrate the paperback coming out, which has, if you haven't read my book yet, it's totally fine. It's called Goodbye Hello, Processing Grief and Understanding Death Through the Paranormal. And the paperback comes out March 7th, and it includes an extra chapter, another chapter, an insane thing that has happened since the book released in September of last year. And there's also a workbook journal in the back, because a lot of people would say, because the book is about how can we better understand our own grief and mortality through the paranormal? Like, can we heal knowing that they could be with us? Like, what do we know? What are our thoughts on it? Yeah. And I had a lot of people that said, I would read a chapter about, near-death experiences or dream visitations. And I would have to stop and write down in my journal my own thoughts about it. And so I added an extensive workbook journal in the back that goes with each chapter with prompt questions. So you can read the chapter, flip to the back, get that first prompt question, and then you can write in the paperback your thoughts about whatever that experience was for you. Or do you believe in ghosts? Like, how has your theories changed? Have you ever had an experience? But it's great, and I'm so happy that it's being released, and they put me on the cover this time.
Oh.
Cover girl, put that bass in your walk.
But I love that. I love that there's a workbook. I love that people can write down their thoughts and like kind of go through it. And grieving is such a hard thing and such an individual thing. I mean, even I know it sounds ridiculous, but I still grieve my dog. And that was
Yeah.
like one of the hardest things that I know. I saw that.
This one, my soul left my body when she
Yes.
left the earth. I could not. This is why I think she's my warrior. And I don't know. I love it, but like I talk about it in the book where it's like, the death of a pet sometimes can be worse than the death of a person because you're everything to them, and it's so sad. But I just know, like during that experience, I'll spoil a little bit, but like we were in Salem, Massachusetts. It was the night before Halloween. We were staying at the Hawthorne Hotel. We had just done the ball for 2 days, and she had sort of declined, and we knew that it was on the way up, but our idea was like, she's going to be fine over the weekend. Let's take her on Monday. And that night before Halloween, in Witch City, which I always called her my little witch, and she comes alive, she was like, it's my time. And we knew it right then. And so we had to take her to the emergency vet half an hour away and do the deed. And when we were doing it, Ben literally saw a crisis apparition of her run into the room after it had been done because they had left us. And he's like, I see her. Like, I didn't see her, but he was like, I see her. And she's like, she's jumping and she's healthy. And she's like, like on your leg. Like, it was so wild to me because we were in such shock and grief, and he could see her. And which was, it's something that happens sometimes when somebody passes. And I was like, it was a wild thing, but it was almost like telling us she was okay at a point,
Yeah.
And so there is a whole, like, there's questions about pets. Like, how does that affect you? And, what is that
You're right
like?
about it almost being more harder than a person in some cases, depending on who the person is, because the pet is literally with you every day and in your bed in most cases, and like following you around and relies on you for everything. And you kind of rely on it for a lot too. Whereas people pass away and it might be somebody you're very, very close to, but it's not somebody who's like necessarily next to you 24/7.
Right. Your pet you are their everything. And they love you at your worst, at your best. There's no judgments.
Yeah.
They've been like, I just think about like, Ben, my husband Ben, got Maria the year before we got together. So this was like, she got her in 2005. She lived to be 17 and a half, but she was witness to all of us, like all growing and being and moving and struggling and getting,
Yeah.
it's almost, it's so, I'm so blessed. Like I always say to people, like we were so lucky to have that pet in our life. And there's never going to be another one of that pet, right? There's going to be, like, we have Cheeto who's 17 and a half, and we're going to have to deal with it again. So I'm like, why did we do this to ourselves? And then we just got little Buddy Buttermilk, who is a Spitfire Chihuahua that's a year, he just turned a year. So it's like, there's something to it, even though it's the most painful thing in the end. What you get from that experience and being with them is so much more than the grief you feel, I guess, because we continue to do it. We continue to ask them to be in our lives. And if I could open a kennel, I would. I you know what I'm saying? I'm like that person when it comes to dogs. But yeah, so we talk about it in the book, and like we sort of analyze. I think she's watching over us. I feel like I hear her every once in a while, or I definitely think when it's time for Cheeto to exit, because he's 17 and a half now. It's been 2 years since Maria exited. I feel like she'll be there, and they're gonna run together and
Aww.
and have their it's sad though.
But speaking of the journaling in the book and stuff too, one of the things that really helped me with Wednesday, my dog's passing, was
Mhm.
writing. I wrote a letter to her, and the letter was
Mm.
17 pages long.
Oh,
Like, I just
yeah,
poured out like everything that
yeah,
I felt, and that really, really helped me. That and a
mhm,
couple other things, but that was one of the big ones.
yeah. I think it when you're trying to process just grief in general, or like or trying to come to terms with like someone's death or a pet's death, putting pencil or pen to paper and seeing the words that you've written down, I think are very, very helpful. It's like that mantra where it's like, if you want to manifest something in your life, you say it, you write it down, you say it out loud, you look at it, you see it. But when you
Yeah,
write, when you're writing, I think I wrote the book, right? So for me, I had to write an entire book about grief
yeah,
and death and the afterlife for my own sake, right? Because
yeah,
I wanted to learn, because I was talking to experts and priests and people who have had near death experiences, who have had dream visitations. And so for me, it was an exploration in what is grief and death, and how can what I know in the paranormal combine with that to make it a bit easier. Like, it's not a how-to book.
yeah,
It's a book that sparks thoughts and creation and ideas. So if you are a bit stuck, or if you need a push in a different direction, this might give you that option. But I needed that. Like, I
yeah.
needed to write that chapter about Maria and put it on paper. And I sobbed through the whole thing. And if you listen to me reading the audiobook at that point, like, my voice cracks, and
Yeah.
I'm getting to a point, but I finished it without stopping, because I was like, if I don't get through this, I'm not going to get through it. Like, if I break down right now, I'm not going to be able to get through
Yeah.
this part. And
Yeah.
so I got through it, and once that happened, it was almost like this weight lifted. It was like, okay, whew, I talked about it, and the people come to me all the time. They're like, that part where you talk about your dog. I was like, I know exactly what you're feeling, right? And I'm not alone in that. And I appreciate you sharing, because it's one of those things, we're not alone in our grief. Sometimes we
Right.
feel like it,
It
but
feels like it. Yeah.
everyone around you has experienced something, some form of it at some point, and know that you aren't sitting by yourself. Like, there are many people who have gone before you that feel the same way.
Totally.
Yeah. So
Totally.
So that comes out March 7th. So if anybody wants to pre-order, you can get it now. Pre-order. Goodbye, hello, paperback. I think I can't wait for the new chapter. The new chapter is mind blowing. I'll tell you. I don't want to spoil it, but
Yeah.
it has something to do with a dream visitation that happened, which maybe I talked to you about. Uh, it's just something that happened with my friend. Uh, and the story continued. I sort of ended that chapter with like this person who came through to her. I was like, this was his grand finale. And I start the new chapter with, I will never, ever say when a spirit is finished on this earth ever again. Because it was just the overture. Because what happened in the moment that the book was published, me doing the audiobook to the release date, is so insane that it makes no sense. I'll tell you after. But everyone
Okay.
else listening, get the paperback, because
Yeah.
you're gonna literally poop your pants, and you're gonna be like, what is happening?
Wow.
It's
Um,
crazy.
I know that this is backwards, but will you please tell me your Gettysburg story again? Because I remember it like parts of it stick with me, but like I feel like I'm missing points to it, and I feel like it was such a good story.
Yes. So in a long while ago, I think it's probably 2004 or five. I was on tour with TheaterWorks USA. If anybody's listened to this and knows what TheaterWorks USA is, you're my people. It's basically like a kids theater program that I auditioned for, and I got my equity card doing the show. We toured the country, and one of our stops was Gettysburg. We were playing the Gettysburg Theater, also very haunted. And it was the first time I had been to Gettysburg, and I really wanted to do a ghost tour on the night off before our show. I was like, I really want to go on a ghost tour. And so I asked any of the other cast members if they wanted to go. Nobody wanted to go with me. And I said, fine, I'm going to go on the last ghost tour of the night. It started at, I think, 10:30, ended at 12:30. We started at the Farnsworth House. I ate the famous French onion soup.
Sounds
I didn't
good.
It was so good. I didn't have anything to drink because I had a show the next day and I was being very good. So I was like, I'm not going to, I'm just going to enjoy this experience and be fine. I wasn't smoking a reefer. I wasn't doing anything like that. And I went on this ghost tour and they took us through the Farnsworth house, right? They talked about the blood stained in the carpet where the bullet came from that window that probably hit Jenny Wade, the only civilian casualty. They're talking about the ghost of the house. They're talking about all the experiences. We head outside, and if you've been to Gettysburg, there's the Farnsworth house, then across is Mr. G's ice cream, right across the street. And then next to that is the road that goes to the high school, right? So we walked down the road that goes toward the high school, went off to the right, and at that time, the only thing in that field was it was just like a track and field football thing with just a fence around it. Now there's like an access road to the side. There's like they built it up a little bit, but there was just the field. And the guy was saying, he was looking out, he was saying, I just want you to imagine like, thousands of people passed away here. He was talking about the history, the brother against brother, the fighting, just really painting the picture of the atrocity, like just how terrible it actually was. And then he said, sometimes people have activity down where there's this line of trees across the field. We're talking probably a football and a half field away, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's this line of trees, and he was like, they see activity, they have people have things happen down there. And this is like 12:30 at night. And he was like, he was like, and this is where we conclude our tour. And my hand raised. I'm like, oh. And he's like, yes. And I said, I want to go down there. Can I go down there? And he's like, you can, but I wouldn't. And I took off by myself. I was like, okay, cool. Thank you. And I said, thank you. And I walked down across this huge field to this line of trees. And at this point, it was almost like a show me. I was like, I'm into ghosts. I want to have an experience. It was almost like now or never for me. And maybe that was the energy I was giving out, but I was like, I really want to see something happen. And so I get down to this line of trees and I stand and I wait and I look. And, a few minutes go by and nothing's happening. It's very quiet. The moon is not even out. Like, it's really wild. And I remember seeing what looked like a misty anomaly in the trees. Like, it would come up and go away. And I was like, that's weird. And then I looked over here and it was like, and it goes away. And I was like, God, that's so much weird. I'm like, what is that? And I'm thinking, like, sometimes you get floater. I was like, are they in my eyes? Like, what's happening? And then it happened again, but it was higher up, like where there couldn't be someone standing. And it was like, it would appear and then it would disappear. And the trees would block out any of the mist or the light it was giving off, the ambient light it had. The trees would block it out. So I knew that it wasn't I knew that it was in the forest itself. And so I looked to my right because I'm like, is anybody else seeing this? And nobody's there. The tour, they're gone. Like they're long gone. And I'm like, oh, this is so crazy. And I looked down and there looked like a path, like a little break in the tree line, the bushes, that you could kind of walk in there. And I was like, I looked to my right, I looked to my left, and then like any good horror movie, I walk into the line of trees, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh no, I'm going to push. I don't know what I'm doing, but this is crazy. I'm going to go. So now I'm inside of this. The trees are behind me, and I'm inside of this forest. And I could see with my eyes, like I could see around me. It wasn't totally dark, but like, it was dark, but like I had vision, right? Like it wasn't just completely black. And I heard like crunching of leaves, almost like footsteps next to me. I heard what sounded like the rebel yell, which is, woo! It's like a thing, but it was so far away. And on the other side of those trees is just the battlefield. And you can't be there after night. It's against the national park. Like they will kick you out. They'll fine you. So there's no houses back there. There's nothing. I could hear like pop, 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 like almost like gunfire.
Wow.
And like distant, like it's so bizarre. And also like weird twinkling lights, like almost like static in the tree. I was like, this is so bizarre. And I really just was taking it in. Like, I wasn't at the point where I'm like, I'm going to look for speakers. Somebody's messing with me. I was just having an experience that I could not explain. Something opened up for me, and it was like, you can have it. And then as I'm about to be like, okay, I feel like I'm having this experience. Maybe I want to go get somebody else and bring them back. This little orb, like an actual orb, cat's eye orb, I call it. It was light. It lights up by itself. It's not in a picture. I can see it with my own eyes. It comes out of the side into the path in front of me, and it's like standing in front of me, almost to say like I got the feeling like it was like, hey, it's weird. It was just a feeling. You know what I'm talking about? Sometimes you
Yeah.
get these feelings from things, and it was like almost like come here, come here, come here. And it was just it hovered there for a minute, and then it just went, and it shot down like a different path, almost to say, follow me, come this way. And so, like any really good horror movie, I got the hell out of there. I left. I was like, I am done. I was like, I am
a good horror movie.
I was like, I'm capital D done. I did not going back with this orb light thing that I don't know. Because I couldn't make heads or tails of any of it. And I remember I left it and I was like, oh, Jesus. And I was wired. I was so awake. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And we were staying at a motel that's like, if you ever been to Gettysburg, it kind of forks this way. And we were staying at a hotel that was like a quarter of a mile down the road. And I had to walk by myself in the middle of the night all the way back to this motel, looking over my shoulder, like Scooby-Dooing a little bit, like picking it up a little bit. I get to my room and I shut the door. And the first thing I see out of my hotel room window is literally the cemetery that abuts the motel, just sitting right there. And I was like, awake all night. I shut the curtains. I like clipped them together. I sat down. But like that experience to me, I will never forget it. And what's awesome is I've taken my Annie Bruni and Greg and Dana Newkirk. I've taken them back to that space, and even on Annie's events in Gettysburg, we've taken our VIP members back to that space, and we've gotten activity. But it was important for me to take Amy and Greg and Dana because they're seasoned investigators. Like they know what they're talking about. I mean, obviously, and I trust their opinion, but I took them there just to say, this is what happened. I told them the story and we experienced something similar, not the same thing, but they saw the almost static lights in the trees. They heard somebody go, woo, out in the distance is very faint. Like they felt like we weren't alone in the space. And to me, that was just affirmation, right? Mm-hmm. That yes, what I experienced was real. We're experiencing something similar now. And that was it. That experience pushed me off the cliff. It was either, and I could have chosen to just, again, you have two choices when that happens. You say, okay, great. I need more of this. I need to figure out, like, I want more of this. Or you say, you know what, I'm good. It's a bit freaky and I don't want that. But, my upbringing, being obsessed with ghosts as a kid and like being I was like, no. I'm done. So ever since it's been a journey, I guess, And
was the Gettysburg your very first experience?
No, well, when I was a kid, there was a ghost dog. When I was growing up, I experienced a dog that was literally walking around in my room, and I could hear him like walking on the hardwoods, and I could hear the jangle of the chain. But we didn't have a dog. I didn't get a dog till I was in high school. And it was odd. It would scratch on the bathroom door and it would enter. And then when it got to the foot of my bed, there was those knob and tube TVs that when you turned it off, it would glow a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So every time it got to the TV would glow. And then it repeated. And to me, it had energy. It got to the TV. It sort of sparked that energy, whatever. But as a kid, I experienced that. I always thought somebody was like walking up and down the stairs in the house that I grew up in. And it wasn't until I was writing my book that my father said, oh yeah, that house was haunted. We were told that house was haunted by Santa Claus. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, well, not, the man himself. It was just somebody, one of his helpers that helps around town, during Christmas time to get all the lists for the kids. He was like that kind of Santa Claus, but he lived at that house with his family. And we went to a house party in the early 80s. And he had mentioned that he was moving out of this house because they were going to buy something. And my father said, well, we're trying to start a family. We would like to rent this house. And he's like, okay, you totally can, but I have to tell you, it's haunted by a ghost named Gertrude. And my dad was like, don't care, moved into the house, right? And I always had these experiences. I always thought like somebody was walking down to the stairs of the basement into the unfinished basement to do laundry. And I would look over, my parents were sitting right there. My mom's makeup would go missing, and it wasn't me yet. But it would like go just be moved around, which I thought was crazy. And my dad asked Santa Claus, he goes, well, what was the craziest thing ever happened? And he's like, well, in this back room, which ended up being the room my brother and I shared for time I was born, he was born till like 5th grade. Um, he's like, they had a dresser with a mirror that wasn't attached, just leaning up against the wall, and there was a bunch of perfume bottles and boxes there on the counter, breakables. He goes, we left the house one day, and when we came back, the mirror was on the other side of the room, leaning up against the wall, and nothing was disturbed on the dresser at all. He goes,
Whoa.
he was like, he's like, that's the strangest things that happened. And nobody came in the house. They weren't gone that long, but it was almost like Gertrude, like, I was like, that is crazy. And so, I mean, he told my dad these stories, and my dad was like, whatever. You know, they needed a house to raise kids in. They needed a cheap rental, and they got it. So I've had experiences, but like Gettysburg was life changing. And anyone listening that's ever had an experience that is you can't describe it any other way. It's like, I can't describe it any other way. I know for a fact it was real. It changed the course of my entire life. It really did. It really did.
Yeah. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I barely even touched my questions, by the way, so it just means I have to. Oh,
this is 17-and-a-half-year-old Cheeto. He's wearing his Haunted Mansion outfit.
Adorable.
Are you a baby? Do you love it? And then Buddy, if Buddy wants to say hi, here, come say hi to Bridget. Come say hi to Bridget. Buddy.
Hi there.
Oh, the Buddy.
Oh my goodness.
He went to the vet today, and he's been told he has to lose some weight because he's a chunk. He's a chunky.
Uh-oh.
Anyway. Well, look.
If I have anybody in here with me, but
you have to look.
I'm alone.
That's all right. We'll have to do this again, and the next time we'll do rapid fire questions. We'll just do rapid fire.
I love it. No, those are fun. I like it. All right. Tell everybody listening how they can get your book, how they can sign up for some of your investigations, follow you on social media, all that good stuff.
Yes. So the paperback for my book and the hardback are both available anywhere books are sold pre-sale. Amazon's a great place, or Barnes & Noble. If you want to go to any of my events, which I have a lot coming up, especially the birthday party weekend at Mansfield Reformatory, you can go to adamberryevents.com and find me on social media. Just Google Adam Berry Ghost Hunter. I will pop up everywhere. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Twitter. I'm on all of it. We're doing all the things, we're expanding. But that's it. That's where you can get me.
Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Ghost Bunny Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on my spooky adventures, and I look forward to sharing a new ghost story with you each week. Please subscribe to our podcast. You're always the first to know when a new episode is out, and follow us on social media at Ghost Bunny Podcast on Instagram and at Ghost Bunny Podcast on YouTube. Bye, guys.
Bye.